Greetings, programmers! Busted Thumbs back, and welcome to our second installment in Learning Scratch, taking advantage of the program opportunities that we have inside of Scratch to make your own programs. Now, when we left off in our last tutorial, the first one, we learned about some of the elements that make up a Scratch program. The places where we can make our scripts, our programs on the right, the program running up in the upper left, our backdrops, our sprites, and we started with our little cat sprite. Today we're going to talk about some of the things that we can do to make our own programs. And the way that I would like to start, and there's a lot of things, different ways you can learn how to program. But the most interesting thing I think we can learn about to begin with is to learn about something called variables. Now, variables are the things inside of a program, whether that's Scratch or any other programming language, that keep track of the data, the interesting stuff that you want to do, the stuff about your cat or your sprite or your backdrop or your program or whatever it happens to be. And one way to learn a little bit more about variables, I think, is to think of them originally as a name tag. So I got this little thing I put into PowerPoint over here that might help illustrate this as we go along. But if you think back to one of the times where you've maybe needed one of these, you're either at an extended family outing or it's your first day in school or something like that. You don't know everybody who's there at the event that you're wanting to do. A lot of times they'll pass out these little name tags. And right at the top of it, it might say, hello, my name is, and you have to go ahead and fill it in. So you can think of this name tag like it is a variable. In this case, it's a variable that's going to track your name. So if I had one of these, I might put in Busted Thumbs here, and I'd attach that to me, and then I'd walk around and everybody could see that I have a name, and that name is Busted Thumbs, and that's how they could refer to me. Right? So there's two key elements of a variable when we talk about a variable. The first one is the name of the variable itself, the thing that it's about, and the second thing is the value of the variable. In the case of a name tag like this, the name of the variable would actually be name, which might seem kind of confusing. The name is name, but that's what it is. The name of the variable here is name, and the value of the variable in my case is Busted Thumbs. Now my daughter, who likes to do Scratch as well, she has her account out there and she's Fluffy Wishes. So she might have the exact same name tag where it said the name of that variable is name, but in her case she would write Fluffy Wishes inside of there, and that would be the value for her. So same variable applied to two different people in this case would produce a variable with two different values. Same name, two different values. The other thing you need to think about when it comes to variables is they're a little bit different from name tags in that you can change the value that's inside of them. So you can think of it like more like a penciled in name tag, or maybe a name tag made out of a whiteboard that you can erase at some point and just change later. Like for instance, if I were at this event and I was finding that people were having a hard time with how long my name was and I just wanted to go by something shorter, maybe after a while I just changed the value of my name to be Thumbs, and then I would know who people are talking about, even though it's not my full name. The other thing that you can do is you can have more than one variable that describes you, of course. Like your name isn't the only thing that you have. So if I switch over to this one over here, suppose I had, yes, my name. In fact, I should just take this guy over with me, put it back in there and say my name is Busted Thumbs. But I might have another one that was given to me at the table that says hello, my age is, and I could put a value inside of there. So in this case, I would take the value bit and I put it over here, and instead of being Busted Thumbs, I'd put in whatever that age might happen to be, like some number. Now, obviously, I'm not 14 years old, but a variable can store whatever value you might want to have inside of it, and there are people who would be potentially 14 years old at whatever event you happen to be at. And you can imagine that I could have both of these stickers on me at the same time, and it would say that I am Busted Thumbs and this is my age, and it might say other things about me as well. It could have different variables. So that's how variables kind of work. They're attached to something, they have a name, in this case it's name, in this case it's age, and they have a value. In this case it's Busted Thumbs, in this case it's 14. So let's apply that to Scratch. So if we come back into our Scratch program, we've been looking at this kind of view of the world here. And the thing is that on the right we have our program and it's empty. On the left we have our program as it runs. And in the middle are the various things that we can do to make up our program. They're the building blocks that our programs work from. At the top of that section where our scripts are, it has a bunch of categories that we can work with. And the category that relates to variables is this orange one at the bottom that says data. Now I know that this might be hard to see some of the text that's in here if you're watching this on YouTube. One way to make it look a little bigger is to expand it to full screen if you're having trouble following along. But inside the programs that I write and when I run the programs, I will actually magnify them out a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. The only problem is in this middle bit right here, Scratch doesn't provide a way of actually magnifying it. So I'll try and talk you through that. When you come to data, there's nothing in here but a couple of buttons, and one says make a variable. We're talking about variables, and the other one says make a list. We'll do make a list later, but right now we're interested in make a variable. When you click on that, a little dialog box comes up. It says there's a new variable we can create. Well, we've been talking about a name variable, so I'm going to type name in right there. And then we have two options. We can either make that variable for all sprites, or we can make it for this sprite only. And that's a very important choice that you have to make. And you can ignore this cloud variable. That's a very advanced topic, and we're not going to deal with that in the beginner's tutorial. When you make the variable for all sprites, it means the thing that we're keeping track of is not just for the cat. It's for everything. And we can talk about some of those in a minute, but what we're talking about here with name is a variable that's just for this cat. If I had a dog sprite in here, I don't want them to share the same name. So I'm going to make sure I click on for this sprite only when I'm creating the name variable, and then I can just click OK, and you'll see that a whole bunch of options popped up underneath the make a variable button. I now have a variable named name, and a variable inside of Scratch is this rounded rectangle thing that you see here, and the name of it's popping up inside there. I'll make another one just so that we can see the difference because the word name kind of gets overloaded here a bit. I'm going to make one called nickname as well. So now you see I have both variables. They're both right here, name and nickname, and they both have that kind of rounded rectangle look to them. Not only did they pop up here, but they also popped up inside my screen for my running program, and I can make that bigger and show you that there is now a variable called name and a variable called nickname, and it's on the cat variable. That's why that cat is there out in front. Might look a little funny because Scratch, when you don't tell it what the variable value is inside of it, which we haven't done yet, it's just going to assume that it's a 0. So that it just filled in 0 for us. But these are our variables, and they're things that we can work with, and we'll make them do interesting things a little bit later. Okay, so we have two variables now. And you may have noticed that not only did our variables pop in, but some new blocks popped in here as well. And these are the ways to interact with our variables. In order for me to do anything that interacts with the variable, though, I have to put one event in real quick. And I'm going to drag this one over, and it says when the green flag is clicked. Now, you may have noticed that when we start our programs, there's a little green flag up here, and we click on that to make everything go. So what this little event guy is saying is that when we start our program, this is the kind of script blocks that we want to have run. Okay. And all I want to do right now is make sure that I get the name and nickname right on my cat, because he is tired of being a lonesome cat with no name. So I've dragged over the set block from the data category, and this by color, so all these things are going to be orange if they have to do with the variables. I just drag that over from this middle section and I put it onto when the green flag is clicked. I have a little drop down menu that lets me pick from my variables. I'm going to take name, and I think my cat is a Domingo. So that is the name that I'm going to give him. So he now has a name. And you will see that if I now open up my program and I click on the green flag, it's going to change his name to Domingo. Nickname didn't change because we didn't tell it to, but now his name is Domingo, which is great. We've got something. We've got some things we've worked with. I want to change both now though, so I'm going to pop nickname in there too. And since Domingo's a bit of a long name, we'll make his nickname Dom. And the way Scratch works when you go ahead and make scripts, and scripts are these things over here, is it handles the event that happened when the green flag was clicked, and then one at a time, it just walks down from top to bottom all the blocks or instructions that you've put together underneath that event. So as soon as the green flag is clicked, the very first thing it's going to do is set name to Domingo, and when it's all done doing that first one, it's going to go down to the second one, which is set nickname to Dom. It will do both of those things, and then the program's all done. It's done everything that we've asked it to. And I can just show you that that certainly is what it will do. Domingo and Dom. Okay, so now we have a variable set, which is great. We've made some progress. We've actually written some code, and we'll do some more interesting things with that code in a little later. But I wanted to show you how these variables work a little bit inside of Scratch first. While those things did appear up here in the upper left-hand corner, the variables, we don't have to make them appear. That's what these little check boxes are here. If I click on either of those and I uncheck them, then they'll go away. And if I click them back again, then they will appear. Now, we've set our own variables for our sprite at this point, but Scratch also has some variables that we can use on our own. So if we go back to the one we had highlighted before up in our categories, we can click on the blue one, which is motion. You may have already seen when I had this up before that there are a number of blocks here, and they have to do with moving our cat around and things like that. But at the very bottom, there are some very variable looking things. These aren't orange, they're blue, just like the motion, but they are in fact variables. So if I were to click on these, X position, Y position, and direction, you'll see that they popped up inside of my program. X position, Y position, direction. These are built-in variables. I can't change these. I can't have a set on these. I can't set the X position. It actually is tracking something about that cat. It is related to cat, and you'll see that right here. Every sprite I would create would have one of these. So if I had a dog sprite, it would have an X position, Y position, and a direction as well. And you can see that if I come back here and I do move my cat back a little bit and pop this guy up again, you'll see that those values that I had in there before, they've changed, and they're reflecting the X and the Y position and the angle that my sprite is pointing in. So those are built-ins. I don't need those to show up all the time either, but they're going to be very useful to us as we go on and make more programs. The other thing that you'll probably want to notice is that in all of these blocks that have to do with motion, they're related to my cat. And if I went back to my stage and I stayed in motion, all of that stuff disappears. And the reason for that is those variables that have to do with the position of the sprite, there's no such thing when it comes to a stage. The stage is just kind of everywhere all the time. It has no position. Its position is what it is, and it would never be anything else. So there's no reason to keep track of a variable for it. So when we're inside motion, there's nothing that has to do with the stage. The other categories, however, do have things that the stage could do, because they're not necessarily just tied to one sprite. So if we go just down one category into looks, you'll see that we do have some blocks here. If I go to my cat, there's more of them, but inside stage there are some things that we can do, including there are some variables. There is a backdrop name, for instance, and if we look at it, the backdrop name right now is Sky. Now that backdrop name is, even though it applies to the stage, it's readable by any of my sprites. So even if I went to my cat sprite, the backdrop name would still be there. It just, if you notice, it doesn't have a name of a sprite in front of it, which means it's one of those global ones that applies to everybody, and everybody can read it. So again, these are the built-in variables, or things we can use when we're doing our programming, and we will as we continue with the tutorial. And then there are the ones that we've created for ourselves, and those are the variables which we have made on top of our cat sprite. Now, one last thing before we go, I was talking to my daughter about the very first one, and she said it's so boring having this blue sky thing in there. Why can't you make it something more interesting? So I'm going to, before we leave and sign off and to do our next one, I'm going to actually add another backdrop in here. And I think I like this desert one. Gives it a little more character. So I'm going to pop that one in, and we're going to work with the desert from here on out and let our cat do its thing. And we will be doing more with our cat. Now that we know how variables work, we can start tying those variables into interesting things to do inside of our program. All right, so as with anything, go ahead and try out anything we try here on your own project. You'll be able to get to my project by looking at it. It'll be shared and available to everybody. It'll have a lot more in it because we'll have completed the tutorial by now. But you can go ahead and make your own little project and just follow along with us and experiment as we experiment and try new things if you'd like to. So we've got a bit of a foundation now about variables and the control flow, the order in which our scripts work. And as we go into the next tutorial, we'll start doing some more interesting things with our cat, making him actually do some programming things and build on the ways that we can have an interesting program that interacts with the user. All right, I think that's it for now. Try it out on your own. Come back and come to the next number 3, and we'll learn even more about the things that we can do with Scratch. All right, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.